Hello, ladies and gentlemen, those people that are here in the chat today and on video, and those of you guys that will be watching this at a later date, welcome to our social. Today we're going to be diving into character development, and it's our favorite topic of all time. Yay! The crowd goes wild. I figure a fun thing to get us started, one of our players that was unable to be here today recorded a couple of videos from his characters asking some questions, and I figure a great way to get us started is we can hear these videos and we could kind of go around the virtual room here and answer as one of our characters, and how would their characters answer this question. So let me share with you guys real quick, get one of these videos set up. The screen one. Where did they go? Here it is. All right. So let me know if you guys can, well, let me just check real quick to make sure I have the sound selected.
That is the best face.
I never agreed to this, Thomas.
Nope, hold on. Don't play yet.
I will confirm that we can hear it, however.
All right, can you guys see the video? Is that a yes or no?
Yes.
Awesome, thank you. For some reason, I can't see you guys, but that's all right. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and play this first video here.
I never agreed to this, Thomas. When we made the contract, it said nothing about me being the one that would get kidnapped. Besides, they didn't even give me a decent drink. And what? What? Fine. 3 questions to ask of all the party. Oh. All right. Who do you think you are, anyway? Answer me that. Number 2. What gets your blood boiling? What stirs your veins? 3rd question. What are you willing to do when pushing comes to shoving? I'd like to know that. Now, Thomas, get me that out of...
All right. So we've got 3 questions from this first character. They are, who do you think you are anyways? Second one is, what gets your blood boiling? And the third one is, when pushing comes to shoving, what are you willing to do? So, anybody want to jump in first? Let us know which character you're answering for, and then how would they react to those questions?
I feel like I have some pretty decent answers to those questions for Dr. Morio, although I can't respond to them in character because she is mute.
That's fine. Go ahead.
I guess I could type it out and plug it into the chat if I could figure out how to work the public chat.
That would not make good recording.
No,
it
just
would
go
not.
ahead and answer it, Seth.
So, who does she think she is, anyways? She is Dr. Delilah Morio of, she would not necessarily want to say outright where she is from, because she is from the Order of the Raven, from, not to be confused with the local order, a different one, from a different world altogether. And she does have some discretion, I would guess, in saying that outright, having seen that the local order is not necessarily keen on that sort of thing. But she is nonetheless a doctor, a surgeon, and a host, and intends to stay that way.
All right. So, what gets your blood boiling?
Dr. Morio is a refined person. She expects decorum even when the things get going tough. She gets very incensed by what she deems to be rude or inappropriate, which isn't necessarily simple things like, say, vulgar language or whatever. But for instance, if she is setting the table for drinks, she expects you to either ask or be invited before just sitting down and drinking. She gets very incensed if you sit down and just start, because she considers that rude. She wants to know that you have her permission to be there. And similarly, if she were in the reverse of that situation, she would also make it known that she wants to have permission before sitting down. Overall, she just has a very refined sense of decorum, and she gets very frustrated when somebody breaks that, especially because she's not always able to communicate what that decorum is.
Okay. Awesome. And then the last one that we had was, when push comes to shove, what are you willing to do?
Dr. Morio is not outright violent in her own right. That said, she has on plenty of occasions, almost by design, been perfectly willing to wade into the thick of things, primarily for the purpose of pulling people out. She essentially lives and breathes to rescue people and then perform mildly horrifying surgery on them so that they don't die in the process.
All right. Thank you very much, Seth. Anybody else want to jump in? I can spin the wheel if we need.
I can
I'll go ahead.
do. Oh,
Go ahead, Ryan.
oh, okay. All right. So, two characters. Felix, first up for the first question. If you were to ask Felix who he thinks he is, he would laugh and laugh and then get really confused for a moment, because that's a really good question, because he's actually two people. And then he'd continue to laugh. Felix is the prime Felix of Blackfeather was a tribal scholar from the tribe of Blackfeather. They instilled a lot of power-grabbing ideology into him, and was a fairly cutthroat tribe. He's actually a transplant from a previous game system, that the original LARP that I used to play in Arkansas. I don't really go into Felix's backstory a whole lot, because the original backstory of my first LARP character was super dark and gritty, and I don't like it. It's stupid. I don't like it very much. But he is a fairly decently educated, savvy-witted person, with a somewhat of a violent streak and a fairly rigid worldview in a sense. There was an incident where he murdered a guy because he drew weapons on him, and his justification was, he drew weapons on him, he was prepared to meet death, even though the guy had already been incapacitated. So Yeah. And then Bardiel is the other part of Felix is a psychopomp that co-inhabits his body. That's its own story. Edvard is a retired hunt master. He is from the Duchy of Stenstrom, and he was part of the royal hunting retinue, or the ducal hunting retinue. And he'd gotten on in that line of business from a very, very young age. And in his mid-20s, he got a really successful hunt with a very, very large, profitable monster and retired. Instead of taking a payment, he basically accepted a pension for the rest of his life and is moving down into where we currently are.
And what makes these two characters upset? What gets their blood boiling?
Felix is a very unflappable character. He's excitable, but he's not. I would say the easiest way to upset Felix would have to be messing with people that it has to be messing with people that he values, because there aren't a lot of those.
Okay.
Especially now, he doesn't have a lot of mortals that he's in contact with a whole lot, and he probably gets pretty lonely at times, despite his otherwise weird demeanor and the fact that he's actually never alone, technically. Edvard just wants to lead a quiet life. And if you do anything that would upset that, he's going to become not happy. And he doesn't want to be a monster hunter anymore. He doesn't want to be an adventurer. He just wants to find a quiet life.
Awesome. And last one from our friend is what, when push comes to shove, what are you willing to do? So how far is your character willing to go?
I'll start with Edvard. Edvard would apply the tools of his trade that he's given up. When it comes down to it, if things got hairy, he would pull out the stops and try to do the things that he's trained at and is good at. Felix would do anything. Felix is a bit of a loose cannon. Like, he has a code of ethics, but the primary tenet of that code of ethics is all paths to power are valid. Take all paths, leave no stone unturned. So he's capable of anything.
Yeah, we can thank LARPcraft for the fact that he is capable of some pretty terrifying things by LARP standards. Because LARPcraft was just kind of stupid in that way.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you, Ryan. Who wants to go next? Hey, we have Claire. Welcome, Claire.
Hi, Claire.
I will.
All right.
So who am I? I'm a wanderer. Yeah,
All right.
that's it. That's me.
So the second question is
Prejudice and snap judgments are what gets my blood boiling. And push has never come to shove, so we'll find out.
that's fair. Not knowing where that line is drawn is something that can be fun to explore and to find. All right. Claire, we are asking some character questions here. So just to kind of catch you up, the three questions are, who do you think you are? This coming from another character. Who do you think you are? What gets your blood boiling? And when push comes to shove, what are you willing to do? So.
All right.
Oh, do you want to jump in? Are you ready?
I'm getting everything ready right now because I just got home.
That's fine. You can come back if you want to participate in it.
Yeah, take your time. We don't want you to turn into nail polish remover.
Yeah, I don't know why it goes to the other side of my camera.
It's all good.
But, take as much time as you need. No rush.
Rick,
So just give me a couple of seconds to think.
I'll go ahead and speak for Simon.
All right.
So first question is, who does Simon think he is? He is Captain Simon Veras of the Royce Family Guard. He has been working as he's been with the Royce Family Guard for most of his adult life. Recently promoted to captain in the last few years. Pretty much a stickler when it comes to the law. What gets his blood boiling more than anything is not when people necessarily break the law, but when they outright just do it on purpose.
So you mean everybody in our group?
Pretty much. What won't Simon do? Simon will work within whatever frame of the law he can to accomplish whatever needs to be done. There have been times where he's had to work outside of the law at the instruction of his superiors and Lady Elena. And when that happens, he's very uncomfortable with doing it, but he will do it because that's what he's doing as ordered and as instructed. For answering the three questions for Emend, Emend is the Archbishop Priest of Ren, the god of creative truths, and music and travel. So, what gets Emend's blood boiling? The truth. People that believe there's only one truth and that's it. There's not. There's many truths. It's all, it's creative. Just like colors in the rainbow, everyone has their own interpretation, and we should be open and accepting of all of it. And then what lines would Emend not cross? I don't know many. Emend never tries to do anything generally that will harm people on purpose, minus taking coin. He's basically the LARP equivalent of a TV evangelist, so.
I kind of have to wonder how Emend and Dr. Morio would get along at this point. Because there's definitely points they can agree upon, but also points and methods that they would conceivably disagree on. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see someday.
That surgery stuff is barbaric.
It's what I've got, hon. It's what I've got. It works.
You don't take knives to people to cut them open to heal them. You just use magic and heal them. So that's about it for me.
Taking the coin directly from their pockets is kind of rude, though.
What was that again, April?
says the man that comes from a high magic world. Just magic it away. It's fine. We don't need to cut him open. No science here.
I can still do a little bit of healing with magic. I mean, I can still do, I can't resurrect people. For some reason, they don't like my song when I sing it now.
You need to explain that.
Oh, the song?
Yes.
Okay, so from the previous LARP, Imin would play a song on his guitar and sing for the 10-minute ritual, and it was never going to give you up. So I would rickroll people for 10 minutes. When I try and do it in this world, apparently people just cover their ears and run away. So
That's amazing.
I could go for Ariana. Who does Ariana think she is? She doesn't think she's anything she knows. She is the attendant to Lady Elena. She works for the Order, and she has been working for the Order since she's been with the Order since she was very young. She was placed with Lady Elena at the age of 6, 7 years old. We've essentially grown up together. But I am responsible for making sure things are, the way they need to be for her. So there's Lady Elena. There she is. She can do some magic, but she is very, she's very loyal to both the Order and House Royce. What makes her blood boil? Deception. She's not very happy with people who will deceive other people or making trouble for the sake of making trouble. What would she do? What would she not do? I think if push comes to shove, she would stick with the Royce family. Rather than the Order, but I think that would also depend on what the circumstances were. So she's very connected to Elena, but she's not had to fight, so I don't know how much she would be willing to fight, but I'm sure at the end of the day, if anything were to happen to Elena, she would do whatever was necessary. So. And for Pepper, who does she think she is? She thinks she's a really, really powerful warrior. And by now she might be. I don't know. We haven't seen her in a couple of years. So she might be powerful, but she really wants to be a fighter. She is a fae who has denounced the fae. She cut off her wings, is on Earth, and she, what makes her blood boil is the fae. She is not happy with either of the houses. She does not like them. If she sees other fae, they scare her. So she's a sensitive creature compared to a lot of the fae, and Layad terrifies her. So what would she do? She would die trying whatever she needed to do. She was probably not very good at it, but she will put all of her time and energy into it if it is for the good of the group. She actually has moved off of this plane and all other, well, she's plane hopping right now with a wild core, and they are trying to figure out how to stop portals, figure out, I don't know exactly what we're doing. We're trying to figure out why things are happening and why worlds are being destroyed. So
We keep balance.
yeah.
If a world needs to be destroyed for the balance, then we don't try to stop it.
But that is with Reneth and Nyx, and I don't know who else may join. I don't know.
Technically, Yam.
Oh,
If I were to also hazard a guess from the previous discussions, the wild core is also watching Felix at the moment. because, or trying to locate Felix.
Out of game,
Maybe.
out of game, the wild core kind of became a way for us to have some of our characters from the previous system we were with, and like hold them in a. They're literally held in extra dimensional space right now until we decide to like bring them back to the world. So it's a way for us to have them available in play, but they're not used very often. So.
Technically, my character too, who isn't even part of the wild core.
You're a giant diamond.
I am a prisoner.
You put yourself there. You're not a prisoner. You're a damn.
Yeah, but I did not give you guys the gem. I gave that to somebody else that I trusted, and it turns out I should not have trusted them, apparently. I don't even remember who it was. I want to say it was supposed to be Amend. But, I don't know.
I don't remember who handed it over to me.
Kind of a moot point.
No, I don't. You didn't give it to me. I don't think you talked about it, but if I remember right, out of game, I told you when you talked about it, Emin would cash you in for drinks at the first chance he got.
For just drinks? For a diamond that size, you
Hey,
can buy a fucking vineyard.
Hey, that's a lifetime
Just
worth of
buy a
drinks for me.
vineyard and retire at that rate.
Yes, but you see, with a vineyard, you have to wait for the drinks.
Should have given it to Felix. You totally wouldn't have used your soul as a vampire-powered soul battery.
I mean, who was a pretty skilled mentalist? I kind of wonder how that would have turned out, in fact.
Badly for everyone.
I agree. Badly for everybody involved, and a great number of people who weren't involved.
All right, I apologize, guys. I had to step away. Who else still would like to answer the questions?
What all questions are there?
The questions were, who do you think you are? What gets your blood boiling? And when push comes to shove, what are you willing to do?
For Nova, I would probably say, I mean, she's a cyborg, so she's half mechanic, half human. I try and play her as equal both sides I possibly can, but she ends up leaning more towards human side more than anything. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
What gets her blood boiling? She's not really control freak, but she doesn't really like if things go in a bad direction than what she originally thought of. If it goes like down rail.
She doesn't like it when it goes unexpectedly, then.
Yeah. She's like a really logical person. If she thinks a way that something's going to go and it ends up going in opposite direction, then she doesn't know what she's going to do.
That's fair.
Then what was the third one?
When push comes to shove, what are you willing to do?
She's probably good at thinking of the most logical, like, answer to go with, depending on the situation. Like, that's a pretty broad question, so that's what I'm going to answer with.
It is a pretty broad question. All right. Are we content here with these questions? Anybody else want to answer them in character?
Not in character, no.
Well, for their character.
Who does Z think she is?
Yeah.
Z is the product of a world lost, but she never lost her skills. She would tell you that she is one of the greatest blacksmiths that ever lived.
I love it. Strong character choices.
What was it? Who do you think you are?
What
makes your blood boil?
Yeah.
Ripping people off, merchant-wise. You get what you pay for. And people that don't know, like, she appreciates bravery and courage and kind of looks down upon cowardice, but has a lot of life preservation. Her blood gets boiling when someone doesn't know when to quit. And sometimes that's herself, and she gets mad at herself later. And what was the last one? When push comes to shove, what do you do?
When push comes
What are
to
you
shove,
willing to do?
what are you willing to do?
What are you willing to do? I don't want to say whatever's necessary because there's a long list of things that she won't do.
Murder a guy in a back alley.
A merchant for
These are negotiable terms.
You see, that's when push comes to shove on a personal level. Now, when push comes to shove and like other, I don't know, that I'm with Claire. That's a really broad question. Let's see. Who else did I have? Blair. What did Blair do? Who does Blair think she is? Well, she doesn't quite know. She knows what her job is. She announces important announcements that she's told to announce, and she delivers mail without snooping through it. It's none of her business what's in those envelopes. It is her business.
The order thanks you for your service.
It is her business to know who comes and goes through town, to know where to deliver the letter to, and it's also her business to report any findings that she has. Speaking of, Emend should be getting a letter from the order at some point.
Oh boy.
If it's not here,
Blair will find him. A letter will be delivered.
What if Blair just somehow is able to find people anywhere? Like, you're hiding out in the middle of the woods and she just knocks on your door and is like, delivery.
Don't
I am
make
weirdly
them shove it
reminded
down
of-
the chimney.
Person. Can you repeat that, Angela? I'm sorry.
Don't make her shove it down the chimney.
I
on Sunday.
reminded of the courier from Skyrim,
Yeah.
who just kind of appears whenever you enter a town. It's like, oh, hey, there you are. I totally wasn't stalking you or anything.
That would have to be something that I could do with permission, because that's a little overpowered for just a player character.
It is, but it's a fun concept.
What gets Blair's blood boiling? Incorrect postage.
She takes her job very seriously.
I haven't really gotten to explore her enough to know what actually gets her blood boiling or what she would do when push comes to shove. So I genuinely don't know what I'm doing or what kind of mindset I want to have or will have for Blair. It's just kind of, let's play her and see what happens type thing. So.
Makes sense. Well, I suppose I should probably give for Kalen. Kalen, who does Kalen think he is? Kalen has struggled with identity for a long time, mainly for the fact that he's had to change and be other people, like literally changing his appearance and being other people for days, months, potentially even years at a time, can really mess with somebody's sense of identity. But one thing that does drive him is understanding what caused the loss of the world that he came from. And so his big drive is knowledge of the portals and of magic, and almost to the point where he identifies with that kind of raw information as almost who he is, and that search for it is driving, and what gets his blood boiling is injustice, I suppose. If I was to give a alignment to him, he would probably fall somewhere in the chaotic good. Most of the time he won't take action on little stuff because it would reveal potentially things about him that he doesn't want people to know. But he finds himself risking everything whenever somebody is has had a great wrong on them. And what is Kalen willing to do? I have not found the upper limit yet. I know Kalen would be willing to take a life. I know Kalen would be willing to sacrifice people who are trying to harm others.
Mental manipulation.
He doesn't really care much for law. What's that?
What about mental manipulation? Like, I don't know, modify memory or something like that.
I don't know. That's a good question. I haven't really considered, like...
I just figured that hangs out at the upper limit. Usually.
Yeah. Maybe removing somebody's will might be like a limit for him. Because it's one thing to do something to somebody else, but it's another thing to remove their ability to be themselves. Like that does sound like something that would be a limitation for him.
He struggles so much with identity, he doesn't want to take somebody else's.
Very possibly. I have a lot to contemplate on this.
Ironically, that could result in some further interesting interactions with Dr. Morio because she wears the mask due to identity purposes. She's not trying to hide who she is per se, but has an almost religious reason to not show her face to people. No, because of her beliefs, her belief boils down to, on that regard, it's not about her. Other people don't need to know what she looks like for her to be a contributing member of the community.
Sure.
And so that idea of an almost forged identity, explicitly forged, could probably be very interesting to Kalen if he were to discover that fact. They both hide their identity, but for wildly different reasons.
Possibly. Angela, do you want to answer any of the questions for your characters? Or have you? I stepped away, so. No? All right.
I'm running on 4.5 hours of sleep and spent almost 4 hours down at Hammond's Tower trying to deal with census job stuff. I'm really not in the mood.
That's fair. No worries. All right. Well, one of the big draws to today's event was the ability of us to ask questions about other people's characters. So I want to open up the floor. So if anybody has any questions about characters, some of the characters that we have here today are Kaylin, Zaravika, Simon, Amend, Blair, Malachi, Ariana, Pepper, Felix, Edward, Kalora, Dr. Morio, and Nova. So if you guys have any questions for these characters, that was a great time to ask. I've got one that I'll start off with to open up the floor. It's actually for Nova. So Nova, you just recently had a huge story arc going on. How did Nova feel at like the pinnacle of all the chaos?
She was very concerned on both sides, one for people and the other one for the kind of community that she kind of got formed into. She was really torn on both sides. To her, it was more along the lines of just kind of like a diplomat, but that ended up not happening the first time. So she was very torn, and also personally, I was very like heartbroken in some way because it didn't really work out the way I thought it would. But it did end up working out at the end of it, so I was glad on that, even though there was still a fight.
Hey, sometimes it gets messy.
And the GM's like throwing twists at you to keep things interesting.
Okay.
I have a question for Zaravika. Out of all of the people you have known from your previous world, who do you miss?
Each and every one of them.
That face.
Like, oh god, like even the villains. Because the villains there were obvious evil. They weren't dubious and sneaky and like hiding in the shadows. They weren't super duper hard to find. Yeah. So much. So many.
Follow up to that is, have you met anybody on this plane from your old world? And have you?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. I couldn't remember how many people like that Z had met up with.
Let's see. There's Varric, Emend. I don't remember. Has Helly showed up to an event yet? Not yet.
Not
Okay.
yet.
So Varric, Emend, Felix, Hermes,
Okay.
Leod.
Okay.
It's a small group.
Steadily growing.
I've got a question for Dr. Moreau. You say that your Order of the Raven would be frowned upon by the Order. Why is that?
I think Seth stepped away for a moment.
Okay. So I'll ask him when he gets back.
I got back just in time to hear why would that be.
Okay. I was going to ask, why would Dr. Moreau be hesitant to share the Order of the Raven? Why is it in conflict with the Order itself?
So the Order of the Raven is ultimately a scientific community from her homeworld. A little bit Illuminati-ish. They want to uncover the secrets of the world and understand them completely before sharing them with the rest of the world as appropriate. It is interesting to note that as far as she knows, her world still exists. It's fine. Their order found a portal that led to this world, and they can go in it as much as they want, but haven't quite figured out how to get back through the other way consistently. And Dr. Morio looks around at the local Order of Halcyon. That was the word I was trying to remember earlier to distinguish between them. And thinks to herself that they would be intimidated / concerned, to put it lightly, about the idea of some other organization, as deeply entrenched as not in their knowledge as they are, having that ability to potentially move freely between two worlds. Especially when you also consider the fact that her world is very low magic, to the point where the term magic isn't really even applicable to the things that would be considered as much, but has reached a point of approximately industrial age technology. And so, if that became a thing, she feels like the two orders would be particularly at odds with each other, especially as they have similar methods but rather different goals. The Order of the Raven is ultimately just about acquiring knowledge and then trying to use it as responsibly as possible, whereas the Order of Halcyon seems to be significantly more political in nature. And so she knows in her deepest of hearts that if they ever confronted each other directly, then it would get very violent and bloody.
Okay, thanks.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Seth. Who else has some questions?
I have a question from Dr. Morio to whoever feels comfortable enough answering it first, I suppose. And that is, since she does come from a world where magic is more or less non-existent, she has the general question looking around at a more magical world, even one where it's just as small as it is in Australia, and wonders, at what point do you stop calling it a science, a set of things that can definitely happen if you follow the right order of steps, and start being this inexplicable anomaly that she would traditionally think of as quote-unquote magic? Like, at what point do you draw that line?
Kaylin, so there's a phrase, and I can't remember who said it, but there's this phrase kind of fits Kaylin's mindset on science and technology and magic, and that is any technology indistinguishable enough, and I'm butchering the phrase, but indistinguishable enough would be considered magic. And
I know the quote you're saying. It's from Arthur C. Clarke, and it goes, "Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic."
That is the one, yes. Kaylin believes it can all be used and manipulated, and we just don't understand it yet. April, you're muted. Oh, sorry.
Science flows through your brain. Magic flows through your bones.
That sounded maybe a little bit funnier than you meant it to, but I find that kind of funny. I'm sorry. I know you probably meant it as a serious answer, but...
Felix probably has an insight to that question that is beyond the scope of probably what I should discuss as a GM. honestly. Like, probably has genuine, like, understanding of the interdimensional physics of different planes that would actually have to be genuinely discussed and planned out by the GMs for him to know exactly what the difference between the two of them is. Because he is a plane hopper, and a very powerful plane hopper, and a very, very powerful force of magic.
You would definitely suggest that once that distinguishment is actually fully discussed by the GMs, that Felix would probably know about it.
Yes.
Okay.
Maybe not definitely know about it, but would have a interesting insight to it. But I couldn't honestly discuss them without like going into the nitty gritty of like interplanar metaphysics. Edvard doesn't. I don't think a whole lot of the people that are native to Estrel see a whole lot of difference between the two, because most magic is teachable, so it's all kind of intertwined. But there's definitely cultures that more lean towards a magical disposition and a technological one. So there is a distinguishment. But I think Edvard just whatever gets the job done gets the job done, and if it means combining the I don't know that's weird.
Simon's answer to that question is it doesn't matter to him. It's all trouble and all needs to be kept as minimal as possible.
I think Ariana would probably say that they're similar, but Kay on the outside would know that there's definitely a different quality to the magic, because there are things that Ariana can do that she doesn't even know are magic. She just thinks they're more influence than magic, more of like persuasion or talent, I guess, than magical magical histories.
And Dr. Morio would also raise the point that there's a big difference between understanding how to do something and understanding why it works that way. Like we've understood for millennia that if you drop a rock off a cliff, it'll fall to the bottom. But it's only been in the past few hundred years or so that we've understand why that really works that way to a really fine scientific degree. And it feels like we're kind of at the same point with magic where, yes, it's teachable, as Kaylin pointed out, but nobody really understands why it works. It's just kind of accepted as another phenomenon of the world. She's looking at it, and it's completely unlike what she's used to in her home world, though, and doesn't even really understand how to do it, let alone why it works that way, I guess is the point I'm trying to make with that question.
That's fair. And I really like the diversity of answers with everybody. This was a good question. I appreciate it. Who wants to go next?
I have a question for Amend. Have you ever not gotten paid?
Wait, what?
Unfortunately, yes. So there's something to be said about people who you heal and then they try and attack you back. Even after you've just healed them, it's not fun, and I hate to have to put them to sleep whenever they do that. So that being said, there's also the situation where I've paid myself twice, where I pick a corpse's pocket, resurrect them, and then charge them for the resurrection again. So
that is amazing, sir.
It's great.
Getting resurrected is startling. You don't know what's going on when you first wake up. It is not my fault that I tried to claw at you.
How strong do you like that?
Also to note,
Yeah.
never not get paid is Rin's second commandment. The first one changes depending on what mood Imin's in, so.
I've got a question for everyone. If you have accepted a job and you have a long-standing job, why do you do the job that you do?
Science.
Well,
And
okay.
hoarding.
So, Dr. Morio can interpret that on a couple of levels. On the one hand, I feel like she's kind of cemented herself in the community as a go-to healer, and is currently also trying to get into the Alchemist Guild, and all of that is ultimately just trying to get by day to day, and helping other people get by day to day. In the grander scheme of things, though, having already explained how she got here and why, ultimately, as it happens, it's an extension of her core purpose of wading into the thick of things and pulling people out. She's not the first one to come through that portal into this world, but the apparatus they were using to maintain contact broke somehow. They haven't figured out how, and she volunteered to go through and find them and make sure they were okay while they were trying to figure out how to fix things. So far, she hasn't found them yet. It remains to be seen if she's ever going to find them, to be honest.
For Kalen, his job is with the Order, which, quite honestly, is very far against his core kind of morals. But to him, this is the only place that he can find the secrets that he needs. And so it's a means to an end. What the end is, he doesn't know, but he needs to know.
For Simon, I would say growing up in a more chaotic environment as a kid, the idea of a society that's based on law and order, and being able to protect those that need protecting and maintain peace is ultimately what he values. And fortunately for him, the Royces have been very much a supporter of maintaining peace. Sometimes they use unique ways of doing it and bring unique characters together in order to ensure that peace is maintained. But ultimately, that's their focus is peace and prosperity for all, and Simon really can identify with that and support that as more than just his job, but as a philosophy for his life.
That kind of makes me wonder, given that loyalty to the Royces and their apparent vision, how far would they have to stray off of that vision for him to go against them?
Pretty far. There's been a lot of times where Lady Elena has said something, or Renard Royce has said something, and it's Simon's going to question and go, "Are you sure? Or is this really what you want?" But it always turns out, they have an uncanny ability to plan and to strategize that they've shown time and time and again to Simon that they're trustworthy. And so it would take a lot to break that trust over several years.
Probably including, amongst other steps, somebody else not directly in the family taking over the same position, I would imagine.
Possibly, yeah.
So for everybody else, back to April's question, why do you do the job that you do?
order took, like, not took me in, but I went to go essentially, I went to school with the order when I was very young. So they have taught me, you know, they educated me when that was not an option in my hometown. And once I was paired with Lady Elena, and so at this point it's kind of family, you know. So there is a familial quality to the family, to the Royce house that keeps me going. There's, you know, also room for upgrades. So as long as Elena moves up in the world, so does she. So, but at the end of the day, she would probably stay with the house. Again, she would probably stay with the house before the order. But why does she do the job? I mean, she gets to see the world. She gets to, you know, go to fancy parties. She gets to, you know, do a lot of different activities. But she also doesn't have to fight. She can, but she doesn't have to. So, but at the end of the day, it's not as much of a job for her as it is, you know, being a member of the family. So
There's a lot of benefits to being assigned to a Baroness.
yes, there are. The food is great. The food is great.
So, Ryan.
Yes.
Edvard, you said he is retiring. Before he retired, what did you say he did?
He was a part of the ducal hunting retinue.
Why did he do that job?
He did it because he was good at it. He so I would say he probably came up through a not noble but almost aristocratic, like not necessarily aristocratic, high status non-nobility, and basically gotten in to be a like apprentice to a to the royal hunt, to the royal huntsman, and through that got to hunt with the Duke and her family, or the Duchess and her family. The Duchess in Stinstrom? Whatever. Got to hunt with the ducal family and basically just became part of the retinue. And being in the Badlands, there's a lot of big and nasty things to go hunt there. So, yeah, there's no shortage of demand for skilled hunt people, and specifically ones that don't necessarily ply in the trade of just hunting. Basically, small scale engineering to adapt to things that are dangerous and unique. So, effectively, because he was good at it and he had it in. Now he's
Becca,
Yes.
you said that Kalora is a wanderer.
Yes.
What is she looking for?
The place. I mean, she's a wandering fortune teller. So,
Well, let me rephrase. What would cause her to settle down and to stop wandering?
that's a very interesting question. Well, she normally does settle down for a little bit, normally spending a month or two in a place. So I guess really the question is, what would it take for her not to just move on? And I guess that would be people. depending on the people that are there, would either keep her or put her away quicker.
Awesome. Thank you.
That leads me to another question. And this is more a Becca question than a character question. If your character does make that decision to eventually move on instead of staying here, will you just make a new character, or will you fight your character decision and make her stay?
I will probably fight the character decision, and she might live on outskirts for a while, but I really like the concept of this character, and I'm okay being an outskirts baby. Because I assume that this town has resources that are needed.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm not stupid enough to move on to a place that might not have the resources that I want or the things that I might need. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Why leave an oasis?
That's actually kind of an interesting question in its own right, isn't it?
Why leave an oasis?
Or why are you here?
Yeah, let's go with that, guys. Why are you here?
Why are any of us here? All I can think of is the original opening to Red versus Blue.
I'm a doctor, not a philosopher, damn it.
Well, Felix was here because there was something to... there was a thing that shouldn't have been here that caught his attention. And then he resolved that issue. And if there's ever any other things that are planarly displaced, might show back up. Edvard knows this place is supposedly, or thinks that this place is supposedly a lot quieter than the Badlands. Does not know that the particular place that he has chosen is a place of high portal activity, and probably will be unpleasantly surprised when he gets here.
Nice.
One would think it would be well known by now that this area would be known for getting random folk dropped in.
Maybe not as far north as the Badlands, outside of the Duchy. Plus, there's the other reason why he would move into this particular, into Roy's territory, and that's because there's an exiled Stenstrom that lives here. So, yeah.
I need to... Did the map of Estrel ever get posted, finalized?
The generic map, yes, but I don't think we have one that has... Let me just pull it up real quick.
Because talking about the Badlands, I forget where they are, and I need to look at a map more often.
According to Ryan, they are north.
Well, yes.
Like so if Estrel was like the United States, New England would be the dwarves. We'd be like Arkansas, Louisiana, Tennessee, Kentucky, Alabama. The Badlands would be like North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota,
Okay.
Michigan, that area.
Here, I will share. Can you guys see it?
Yeah, we can see it.
Awesome. So we are down in this section. I forget exactly where the city is, but this section here, this discolored area, is considered to be the Badlands.
And the northernmost tip of it is the place where the there's a trade route between the dwarves and the elves, and that's pretty much where most of the population in that duchy lives, and that's where he'd be from. So a bit far away.
Yeah. While we have the map, anybody else have any questions about it? Or where players are from or anything like that?
The thing that I have for Nova is where I currently want her society to be, I guess, relocated at. Where do you think would be the best spot that would be on the map?
Didn't she go off with the, or didn't her people go off with the orcs primarily?
Currently, yeah. They went with the orcs, and the orc islands are not located on this map.
If I'm not mistaken, they are northwest. And
Yeah, I think you're right, Ryan. I think they are northwest.
Okay. Then I retract that question.
Well, no, it's a good question. I just don't know if we have an answer for it right now.
If we assume that everyone cooperated on the topic, the Badlands might not be so bad anymore if they renovated it, which they certainly seem to have the technical capacity to do.
that would not be a technological question. There's some logistics that. So Badlands is a magical, wild magic hotspot, basically. There's some stuff that went down there that make it kind of uninhabitable or volatile. There's also, I don't know how.
I assumed a more traditional Badlands. My mistake.
Yeah. I don't know. There's a couple answers. You might consider, since there's ongoing negotiations with the elves and the orcs, maybe that's a thing to pursue. But the other thing is, if you want to sneak in there and just trying to set up a society, there is a big freaking desert in the southwest corner of that map that is a desert and therefore very uninhabited. But if you're, depending on how adaptable to extreme climates your people are, that might be another place to consider.
Well, and the world that they just came from was deteriorating, I think you've said. And was it kind of like a barren desert as it is right now?
At one point it was prosperous. There was a lot of grass and everything. There was like trees and whatnot. But I mean, considering it was deteriorating, it did kind of become like a desert, yeah. But not like a hot kind of desert. Just kind of became like a foggy kind of desert-like existence.
Okay. I've got a question for everybody. So anybody can answer this if they want to. It's about personal relationships of your character. And it's two parts. One is what is another character that your character is drawn towards? And the second part is what is another character, or who's another character that your character is steering away from? Who are you drawn towards, and who are you steering away from?
Zaravika, I haven't thought of anything since all this has been going on, but Z has been gravitating towards Nova a lot lately because their world's falling apart. Z's world fell apart. They're trying to find a new home. Z found a new home, and there's some sketchy, weird stuff going on. And also dealing with the orcs. Z is very trusting of the orcs because she's like, no, orcs are fine. We don't have any stigmas against orcs here. Or back in my home world. I don't know what you guys' problem here. I don't know your history. It's fine. But hanging out a lot with Nova, talking about orcs, talking about, finding a new home, why are they so against the orcs? What did they do? Hey, orcs have guns. So.
It's kind of a shame that Dr. Morio missed that. I think she would have completely lost it over the idea that some of these people do in fact have guns.
I have an interesting answer for Felix,
Yeah.
which is not a character that has been introduced. Felix is both drawn to and avoids Reneth. Because Felix is like, yeah, no, it's my blood tribe. Like they are intertwined, and like it's one of the few people that Felix genuinely gives a shit about. But at the same time, Felix also knows that if Reneth disagrees with any of the things that Felix does, Reneth is the only person that could bring him in line. So, yeah. Interesting problem, that.
I would say I would add one of the few who could reliably bring him in line. Like, I could think of other characters, especially from the LARPcraft world, that could definitely contend with him, but not necessarily reliably.
Felix
So that's
never
an
screwed
interesting
with
distinction.
Felix never screwed with Ufnar. Felix has some self-preservation. He might try to now, but he didn't then.
If anybody's ever had the question who would win in a knife fight between Felix and Reneth, the answer is neither. It would be a stalemate because they're matched.
We'd both be dead. It's fine.
I'm pretty sure everybody else around you would be dead too.
Plot twist. The winner would be Ufnar.
To answer your question, Jeff, for Emend, Emend's drawn to his wife Hildy. Doesn't get to see her very often right now. And as far as avoiding characters he avoids, it's not people, anyone in authority. The order, the law, the nobility, people that he thinks might be in authority, he just steps away from them.
Similarly,
Nice.
Laura tries to stay away from people of authority who can force other people out or make rules. And is drawn to people who like to have a good time. Because, come on, who's not drawn to people that like to have a good time? Plus, those are the people that want to know their fortune more often, and money.
I would say for Ariana, other than the Royce family, somebody she's drawn to is more Simon. And that's because they've been in the same town for a long time, and there's all these portals, so people are coming and going in this area, and so there's kind of a bond that at least they have a similar goal in mind, but they also can look at each other and go, you remember back when, they can, like, they have a history of existing in the same space. Somebody that she avoids, I'm not sure if there's anybody that it would probably be other houses. So the Desjardins, the thing is she would probably pretend to be very interested, but she doesn't really necessarily want to be around them, but for information, it would be necessary for her to be around them. I would also say, she's not exactly excited about people who are coming through the portals, because it just creates a lot of extra paperwork and it creates a lot of extra headache. It's a lot to maintain and keep track of. So she feels a little bit like she has to keep explaining things over and over to people because everybody she meets is new. So I would say not necessarily that she doesn't like them, but it's, you know, it's harder to, like, she's, most of the time if she's around, it is not inherently for socialization for the purpose of she's ready to have a good time. It's mostly because she's heard some news and she needs to figure out what's going on. So it just ends up being a little too much of a headache for her to become close to people who are from lots of different worlds. So
Nice. I would say for Kalen, Kalen has only revealed one of his secrets to one individual, and that's Varric. Varric is the only mortal, I guess, that I would say that knows that Kalen is a changeling. And I feel like it's because Kalen gets the sense that he understands Varric, like where Varric is coming from. He understands where he sits on pretty much everything that in his mind. Not a whole lot of secrets to him, at least. But other than that, he has a kind of dangerous draw to people that have influence, because he knows that it's dangerous to get close because they might discover things, but he know it's worth exploring to see what he can get out of it. But as for staying away, honestly, Felix. Felix is a character that Kalen acknowledges that there's no way that he can really manipulate him and get information or get what he needs out of it. He attempted to make a couple of passes to find out things, and was shut down every time. So Kalen has written Felix off as a lost cause and not worth it.
I mean, honestly, in the case of Felix, trying to do anything with that feels like you're just kicking a hornet's nest at this stage.
That's fair, but Kalen is willing to get into some dirty things to find out what he wants to find out. He just feels it's too dangerous to deal with Felix.
He's not wrong.
self-preservation instinct there for you too. Recognize your enemy.
Yep.
Yeah, unless you can get on the ground floor like Zravika did and become friends with at least part of the entity and like, hey, I definitely won't kill you.
I mean, like, Kalen would be willing to try again, but there would have to be some necessity or some need to do it. More so, he doesn't know about the wild core, but like, if he knew about the wild core, that would probably become a primary focus for him, is finding out anything he could about them and be drawn to them. Anybody else?
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Ryan.
I think we were asking the same question. Anybody else have any answers to this question, or have we gone through everyone?
Remind me what the question was again.
Who are you attracted to interpersonally, and who are you repelled by interpersonally? What characters?
I think Nova's pretty neutral on everyone. The only that the order as a whole, probably she's a little more skeptical on, considering the possible use of the technology they may have.
It's a Chrissy.
Yeah. You didn't see them when we nuzzled a little bit when I got here?
Yeah.
No, I did not see that. Your camera took a little while to load.
Oh, well, all right. Do you want to ask your thing?
Oh.
Or whatever?
I sent it to Jeff, but so Valdez has absolutely no one that she's drawn to or feels close to. She is super isolated right now, or at least feels that way, and she's going to avoid Zaravika like the plague. Because that dwarf causes her nothing but headaches and stuttering, and she doesn't appreciate it. She also thinks that she may start a rebellion, and she's not into that.
The Z might start a rebellion?
Yeah.
Against what?
I don't know yet.
But the rest of it's completely fair and true.
But other than that, I don't think she actually has any allies or actual close friends anymore.
There's a person that you write about, or write to, I should say.
Oh yeah, she's dead.
Right, but she doesn't know that, does she?
Yeah, she does.
Yeah.
Oh, she does know that? Okay.
Yeah, like right now the cover story is that when they came over, she didn't make the jump. She passed shortly after.
Mm.
So yeah, she's dead, and Valdez knows that she's dead. Because it's much easier to control somebody if they have no attachments.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so she writes to her dead wife.
Until she forgets. Until she forgets about her dead wife.
Well, no. So, we have it. So originally her wife died in her arms in her home world. But that way she would still not have that attachment here or go looking for her. The order just manipulated her memories where she just died coming through the portal. So she died on this side.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's it. That's all I got. My other character is a surprise, so.
Anybody have any more questions to ask the group?
Yeah, I got one. This one comes directly from Felix. Where do you draw your power from? Or what's the first place? If things were, if things got hairy, where would be the first place you would draw your power from?
So for Emin, it's coming from as far as he knows and as far as he cares, it's coming from Ren. Don't shake your head. And in his hour of need, Ren always has been has been faithful to step up and empower him with whatever Emin needs at that time to survive or succeed. For Simon doesn't, at some level, doesn't know that all his actual abilities and actually can do. So whenever he goes farther than and does more than what he's expected, he just assumes, it's just willpower. He doesn't know of his inherent natural talents.
for Kaylin, I think I don't know if he's aware fully or not. He knows that he is Fae, but he also is fascinated with just raw magical energy. So I don't know if he's pulling directly from his Fae heritage, or if he's tapping directly into the element of magic itself. Um, but he's he's searching magic and trying to find and understand magic. So I think that's what he believes.
I would say Ariana would draw her power from her education. Like in her mind, that's where it comes from, is from what she's learned with the order. So it would be from her education. She would draw on that for her power. She doesn't realize that she's got, a family history of sirens, and that's why she has some of the power that she has, but she would view it as, educational. Pepper obviously would have some magical abilities as a fae, but she would probably also just go off of pure will. Like just, I'm gonna do it. Don't tell me I can't do it. Like, that's where she would draw her power from. So I don't know about like magical power. It would just be because she knows she's fae, so.
What about Zaravica?
What?
Where does your power come from?
Zaravica doesn't have powers.
This is a Felix question. Where do you draw your power from? Not where do you I think yeah.
If I may, he's talking about power in the sense of capability and ability to impact the world around you more than just strictly magical power.
Where do you draw your strength from? Things like that. Oh, how do I keep kicking ass when shit gets rough?
Yeah.
Protecting the ones that I care about a lot of the time. Just pure raw rage. I think that's the majority of it, is just protecting those she cares about. That's where she draws her strengths from. I'm sorry if I missed the point of this question. I'm not getting a whole lot of feedback here.
No, you're good.
Yeah.
Okay. I also need to go to the bathroom, so that's why I was getting up.
You're not allowed.
Counterspelled.
Becca and Claire, what do you guys say for this one?
I draw my power from a need to continue forward. Always forward, never backwards, looking to the future and never the past, because the past is something you cannot change, cannot do anything about. All you can do is overcome the situation that you're in and keep moving forward. I think.
For Nova, it will probably be more of her like technological kind of insight, I guess, is where she probably draws majority of her power from, because I think she's quite logical in some situations. So that's what I'm going to say for that. If it's more humane, probably a little bit more on the human side of her.
Nice.
I have a question that is not necessarily like character development, but maybe like aspirational garb. Like if your character could come in, like I know we all kind of like level up our garb, but if your character could come in fully, a full kit, exactly what you would want it to be, what would it look like?
Ooh. Felix is actualized, I think, at this point. Like, there's enough of a distinguished look to them that I think, I think that's, but Edvard, since he's a new character that I haven't premiered yet, I want a big frick-off spear with him. I want a big frick-off spear. I think that's actually a boar hunting spear is actually the thing that he used. Let's see, male. Like I'm piecing together things, and I'm liking a lot of the things, but male, heavy cloak, traveling things. I want kind of two separate kits that he's going to wind up going for. One is the stuff that he arrives with, which is him selling off most of his worldly goods so he could travel. And then as, he participates more in the story and realizes that he's not going to have a peaceful retirement, piecing together elements of his old hunting gear, heavier armor, crafting kits, traps, and not necessarily looking like the stereotypical like ranger from D&D, but more of a
I think you said The Witcher was a big inspiration, didn't you?
Yeah. Not quite the outfit that Geralt wears, like the one from the games. Maybe a little bit heavier armored than that, but male, and a bunch of doodads hanging off his belt that he can throw at a thing. It's like, at any given point.
For Kaylin, I've got this image in my head that hopefully someday I can kind of achieve with him, but more elegant kind of robes with what's the best way to put it? Kind of bright and gilded, and small bits of tech like gloves and things like that do not feel normal to this world. It's more a merging of technology and magic in a way that they become one, in a sense. Liquids and tubes and very much like artificer feel for a lot of things like D&D or if any of you are familiar with the Vidalcan from like Magic the Gathering, like a lot of their art style is kind of contributed to the idea of Kaylin.
Or ideal kit for Simon's pretty easy. Tankety tank, tank, tank. Armor, multiple weapons, you know, just basically a walking army. For Emend, a lot of his kit's already right where I want it. You know, maybe a little bit more, a nice staff with the Eye of Ren at the top. You know, maybe some more priestly robes. Anything that'll grab attention.
Question one for Zaramica, if you didn't hear it for April. What is your ideal kit? Like your ideal, like if you could come into this character fully decked out, what would you have that you may not have now?
I really need to make a better field kit for Morio's surgery. The one she had has just kind of fallen apart.
Boot covers to make my feet look larger. Very ornate, decorated, like engraved with very Celtic looking designs. A lot of knotwork. More fur, but fur is too hot for Missouri.
So you want boots with the fur?
Yes, actually.
Did they just say winter?
Boots with the fur. I don't know if I'd want a larger shield. I don't know. I miss my pants. I'm sad that I only got to wear them like twice before they had to get cut off, literally.
Not as the person who made those pants, I was also quite disappointed.
Yeah. Need to get some more of that color because it looked really good. I liked being rock colored.
That tunic is
rocks come in all colors. Let's see. Definitely like things to make me look shorter in stature. That's why I tend to wear like baggier clothes with Z. Because it's not that she's not able to find a tailor to make things well fitted. It's to give the appearance that I'm smaller. Because and April is not small. What else? If I could find a decently constructed bearded axe that I knew wouldn't shear off, I want to play around making one of those at some point.
I may have some input on that if you want to chat about it sometime.
My idea is to reinforce it with leather so it doesn't shear off as easy.
I have done that exact thing, actually.
What weapon and how did it work out?
It was a bearded axe, in fact, and it wasn't a beautiful LARP style axe. It was a dagger here style axe. But you have to consider, like, I think you've seen Dag Combat, haven't you?
I've been in Dag Combat, yes.
It's a lot rougher.
Yes.
And especially if you're trying to use a bearded axe, a very common thing is you'll try and hook it over somebody's shield to pull it aside, to open them up a little bit. And so if you're going to do that, you need to have it be sturdy. And I can confirm that if you do it correctly, and I can explain how to do that later, the strip of leather idea that you're having is solid and it will accomplish that.
Cool. Sweet.
But yes, I have done that before. I can explain how to go about it in detail.
Neato. Okay. But the original question was, if I could have my dream kit, what would I have? boot covers, more fur, a different shield, more axes, more hammers. Oh gosh. I wish I could just and grow a beard. That'd be nice. And then just shave it off when I'm done with it.
Wasn't there a SpongeBob episode about that?
Do you want this one?
Well, that would be lovely. You seem quite attached to it.
He can grow more, though.
Yes, but it took... Do you know how long it took to grow that beard?
An entire pandemic.
More baubles, more tiny things. More pouches that wouldn't, like, fall off. Thighs are weird, straps are weird. Yeah. I don't know. I would, honestly, my dream kit would look like I walked out of the set of Vikings. Because I have always pictured very, very Nordic. Oh, and if I want to go with her original design, having a warg pelt rigged around me. Yeah.
If we're going to go with the original design, we still need the bag of rocks, too.
Yes! Oh my god. So, for anyone that doesn't know, my original design for Z, I wanted her to have just a sack full of jewel-encrusted rocks. You know, she would have those because she's a dwarf and they go mining and they find these things. And I originally imagined her semi-wealthy enough that she could just throw those at people.
Ironically, in LARPcraft, you probably could have done literally that almost and gotten away with it.
Thrown rock. You see, and then we met Matt, and Matt donated us that big sack of stress ball rocks. And I was like, I wish I had these 4 years ago.
Haven't really been paying that much attention.
Eating something in a mixing bowl.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Anybody else want to answer the question? Not most people, but...
I know I asked it, but I'll answer. For Ariana, she's pretty close to what I would want for her because she doesn't need a lot. But I do think the one part is her book. You know, she's got a lot of information in her book because it's basically her primer, and, you know, it's got world history and her stories and stuff like that. Kay has not finished this book. In theory, the book is done because Ariana would have been doing this as she aged, but Kay does not have it finished. So that's something I'd like to have with a belt storage so I can carry it with me. For Pepper, Pepper's wings, she cut her wings off, and one thing I would love, you know, is to have a new set of wings, and I would love to have them as something that are like mechanical and can, you know, like they're kind of dragonfly wings, so just kind of like pop up. That would be really cool. But she's, you know, leather armor, and I see Jeff going, let's figure out how to do this. But
You describing Pepper's wings, I'm reminded of the new Amazon show, Carnival Row. I heard that's good.
It's really good.
It's really good.
I will have to watch that. It's, you know, the wings right now are like very tiny. They're about the size of my hand, you know, and they were a lot of fun to make, but I would like her to be, you know, fully, I would like her to be in her full wild cord kit, which is, again, a little more Vikings as well. it's a little bit like that, but also a little Tinkerbell. So I don't know what that looks like exactly, but I would love to have a weapon specifically for her. So I don't have one for her, but I don't play her often enough to be able to justify the cost.
Do you know what type of weapon you want for her?
I don't. Yeah, I have one that's more of like a pirate dagger kind of thing, but I don't know what else.
Mid-sized battle axe.
She was not. I think there was something against metal that she couldn't use that in the old system. I can't remember what all the rules were with the Fae.
Probably the fairy iron thing. That's pretty typical fairy lore.
So it would be something else, but yes, like a giant like club or something. I don't know. I don't know what she would use. I haven't really figured that out. So
We as of right now do not have a ban against iron or a canonical thing of iron and Fae.
That said, is it just metal in general, or is it iron specifically?
It is iron specifically.
So, like, you could use bronze. It's not as good, but it worked for a long time.
yeah, I haven't quite figured out what her weapon of choice would be. So
Just have this big bronze battle axe that you just lug around. It's just like, oh, guess it's time to go chop chop with copper and tin.
You also get a big. You could also join the Big Frick Off Spear Club.
No, with the Big Frick Off Spear Club, go ahead and let the spear tip be iron and just keep it over there away from you. Put it into the other people. You don't ever have to get anywhere near it because it's a good 6 to 8 feet away from you. That's beautiful.
something to think about.
For Dr. Morio's kit, I definitely want to take the way I do surgeries up a level or two, which is kind of difficult because I'm not really even 100% sure how to go about doing that or finding out about that. Like, I'm just not even really sure where to start there. But I want to get that upgraded. I want to get her hosting kit, which is a little bit tavern-ish. I want to get more of that sort of thing going.
I have a recommendation for the medical stuff, and it's in the form of a medical history podcast called Sawbones. And if you want to get an idea of making a bunch of weird props that are also like anachronistically historical and stuff,
like
medical, the weird stuff they discuss in that podcast would give you some ideas.
Like, that's not the part I'm struggling with. I want to find ways to make the surgery itself more immersive. And one of the things I have found that I've been looking at is actually in show business, where there's a magic trick of sorts you'll see called psychic surgery. And there's a lot of fake blood and stuff like that involved. And I've been investigating how to go about doing that sort of thing.
The only thing that would suck
Especially
with that
as I have to figure out how to do it without staining people's clothes or anything as well. So it's weird. And then because I'm a poor college student, I also have to figure out how to do this without spending a ton of money on it. And so it's just like, it's hard to even find ideas for it because this isn't a thing that a lot of people typically do or post about, at least. You know, it's, I don't know.
Seth, at some point, just message me because my specialty in college was basically special effects for film and theater.
Oh.
And with theater, I had to be able to do special effects that did not disrupt anything so that we could use them for a later time.
All right, then.
So.
All right.
I can give you a lot on that.
Because I want the whole experience to be a little bit more visceral, if that makes sense. You know, like, she does usually use anesthetic, but it doesn't necessarily knock you out. And if it's, for whatever reason, she decides not to, then I want to be able to more believably have the person I'm doing it to experience it, as opposed to just having to pretend it's happening, is what I'm ultimately wanting to accomplish with that. And I'm wanting to get some more props and stuff as well that can enable that. Like, not just like tools and stuff, but I'd love to be able to set up a curtain and make something almost like a clean room for more intense scenes. And that sort of thing. Like, I just want to make the experience as a whole more immersive, as opposed to just strictly having more toys to play with when I'm doing it.
Sure.
And then the other big thing I'm wanting to do is less of a kit upgrade and more of a skill upgrade. But I'd like her to be able to contribute to the food and drink going around in more meaningful ways. And so that is a thing I'm going to be trying to investigate. Is different food and drink that I can easily make at LARP on the spot, so that it is a thing that she can do and be seen doing as part of her character.
There's a Facebook group for that that is LARP food, LARP cuisine, that I'm a part of. I can shoot you an invite to it. You might find some resources there that could help you kind of plan and utilize it.
But like, as far as just like stuff she just carries with her and just wears, I'm honestly more or less happy with just like her outfit and such. You know, I'll probably end up making a second dress and a second undertunic, just so that I have more than exactly one outfit for her. But I'm pretty happy with it overall, her general look and appearance. That's the big goal with her as far as just kit goes, is just making those surgeries a little more visceral and real, I guess.
Nice. Anyone else?
I would like to answer that question because my screen cut out and I had to get back on here. Screen cut out? I'm not talking to you. My niece and nephew are in my room right now, and they're thinking I'm talking to them. So I have a picture of what I would like Nova to like possibly wear in the future. So if you guys can see this.
Can you send that to me in Messenger, please?
Yeah, I can do that.
Because I can only vaguely sort of tell just from the grainy picture of a picture. But I might be able to make something similar to that.
Okay, if you could make the jacket part, that'll be great. And then for Nova's kit, that like diagram of all that box stuff that I sent. Guys, can you just shush for a minute? And that I sent to the group. I still kind of want to do that, but I haven't really had time or effort to do that. So that's kind of what the kit box kind of thing I have in mind for her. I do need to make her a kit. I really don't have a kit for her, but I do need to make her one. But I'm not 100% sure what her kit would be.
And that's definitely okay. A lot of our characters have all developed over the years. There's still a lot of stuff for my kit that I have not built yet or created or found. And I know that's the same for a lot of other players as well. Awesome. Thank you so much for your answers. Like, this is awesome to hear your process and where you're going with your character and where it is now. It's fascinating to see it all develop.
It's also nice to know that it's okay it's not there, like to do little piece by little piece. But I know a lot of times you kind of have an idea of what you want to come into a room looking like, but you don't always have the ability to do that. So it's sometimes nice to know what other people picture their character like in their head, even if it's not fully realized in real life.
Yeah. Great.
I was talking to Kayla earlier this morning and telling her about Z's aging problem. And we were talking about adding little silver and gray streaks every few months, just, little tiny pieces.
That would definitely add to the effect.
I bet that would stress Z out.
So I've got a question for everybody, and this is a little bit more of story, and this is completely okay if people don't have this, but I would love to hear about something mundane that you have in your kit that has a story behind it. So be it a weapon or a holy symbol, or maybe it's the headgear or a belt that you wear. I would love to hear the story behind that item. How did your character find it? How did they get it? Where did it come from?
It's not really a mundane item, but it's just a practice that, unless you know Simon real well, you wouldn't notice normally. Simon usually carries 2 swords on him, and people go, why do you need 2 swords? Well, if I drop one, I still have a second sword, because he very rarely fights with both swords out. Normally, Simon draws, it's more of a plain looking, just regular medieval sword. He'll draw that out for his normal fights, if he's needing to intimidate someone to get them in line, he'll do that. If Simon has to draw the gladius, which he has been handed down from previous generations, that means it's a major issue, something's major is going on, or he sees you as a genuine threat.
Nice, thank you.
I was there for when Simon got to learn that lesson. You stole my weapon. Because I dropped it, because I got disarmed, I think, and was making do with abilities. And you just must have shrugged and went, oh, an unattended sword on the ground. I think it's the monk's, but oh, he'll be fine. He's a monk. He can just fight. He doesn't need this.
Hey, it works.
Bastard.
April, it looked like you had something you wanted to say.
In Z's pouches, there is a tuft of white fur. Nobody would think anything of it but her. Belonged to Myra. I don't exactly remember the message that was with it. It was a verbal message, not a physical note. But another friend from her homeworld that she hasn't seen since it crumbled. I've also got a letter from Reneth tucked away in her belt that she's held on to. And off the top of my head, I'm not sure exactly what it said. It's been a while since I read it again. But just keepsakes. I mean, somebody would see an old letter. Well, no, if somebody found that letter, they'd be interested in it because it's got Reneth signed her name in her native language. And also in common. Do what? I'm sorry.
She always did.
Yeah. What else does he have tucked away? There's plenty of things. I can't think of them. But they're all, I don't think there's any like large physical representations. There's no weaponry or anything special.
The big hammer, maybe.
I mean, the hammer's a family thing. It surprisingly has been broken before. That was a complete shock to her. That was not a good day. My eyes are watering thinking about it. But the hammer has since been repaired. The hammer's been in her family for a long time. But it's funny because the hammer in game is a generational family thing, but out of game, it's got a lot of sentimental value because someone very special commissioned it for me. Doot doot. Doot. It's a smacky hammer. Knock the wind right out of you.
I also believe I chose out the phrasing that's on the side of it as well.
You sure did. It is translatable if anyone ever cares to do so. In game, that is. Out of game, it says, "Strong as the mountains we mine." And it says it on both ends of the hammer. So.
Dr. Morio's mask is not in and of itself special, but the mask as a broader artifact does have some history and reasoning behind it that I guess I could talk about. And that, going back to the Order of the Raven, that chose that as their mascot of knowledge, as it were. And so they wear the raven-like mask, partially in keeping in line with that theme. But the idea is that the seeking out of knowledge isn't about inflating your own personality and presence. It's about the Order's some knowledge. And so she wears that mask to represent that fact, even if nobody around her directly knows about it. She still deems that important, if only for the sake of if other members of her order stumble upon her, they're going to recognize it immediately. But even in her home world, it was very important for that reason to her, as a reminder, it's not about me in particular.
Nice. Thank you.
I really can't think of, I mean, obviously Ariana's book is both mundane and it has, a lot of stuff in it. She does have a necklace. It's actually a new piece, but it's a spiral. So her belonging to the order, that's what it is. I think the character that I have that has the most mundane things that she just has with her is Hildy, and I haven't really talked a whole lot about Hildy, but she has her cookbook, which is going to stay intact even if none of the recipes exist in the world anymore. But I think the one thing that she has that is the most interesting is a pouch that has juggling balls in it. So they actually were more performers, Hildy and Amend, before they left their group.
Before he got called to priestly service.
Yeah, whatever. But she knows how to juggle, so that is something that she has with her, and it's one of those things that whenever Kay puts Hildy on, that's one thing that she's got to have, that I've got to have with me. Do I use them very often? No, but it's something that's kind of a, I don't know, kind of a memory, kind of a security piece that she wears.
Nice.
Felix's most valuable physical possession is his skirt, not his hat. Because pants are for the damned and for the weak, and skirts are where it's at. He's just a guy that likes the freedom of movement and the high slit in it, and the fact that yeah is the most consistent piece of costuming on that character.
So I remember there was one event that you were doing something else. I don't remember what it was you were doing. But Reneth had his armor and his hat, and people were freaking out.
The hat is epic. I also actually would have thought it was the feather, but I didn't know if you had an actual feather or if that was just the name of your group.
I actually do, yes. I don't know where it is, but I do have a red feather somewhere as a tribal totem.
As much as the connections with the Wild Core has come up in this meeting today, makes me feel like they need to show up sometime in the near future.
Okay, but like, I don't have anything anymore for a fox.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I want us to do with the 3 active player members.
Yeah, and Nyx's ears broke.
Also, I don't know if I'm going to be up physically for the task of probably playing who. Because if the Wild Core comes back, I don't know.
Just because they have possession of his soul diamond doesn't mean that he has to show up.
I mean, it kind of feels silly to just let it sit there in Brenna's pocket and just be like, oh yeah, that's a thing, don't worry about it.
You think she carries it around with her? Because she
That is what you explicitly told me, yes.
Probably not. She probably has it in like a safe of some sort. She's an enchanter, so...
In their interdimensional world that the Wild Core resides in.
As far as, having this thing and not doing anything with it, the thing that we do with it doesn't have to be bring who back. It is, in and of itself, an intensely magical item with an intensely magical source of power in it. So there could be other things that happen with this. Plus, bringing it into this world, there's not a way to reconstruct a body for who that is a very readily apparent thing. So, yeah.
We would have to discuss the ramifications of it a little bit.
And I think an agreement needs to become with the actual Wild Core members if we've even done anything with who and his soul before you just start inserting yourself.
I'm not trying to insert myself. I really was under the impression that Reneth had it just on her person, having deemed that to be the most appropriate place to keep it.
The Wild Core the Wild Core is together all the time. The players who play the Wild Core members are not always together and have not discussed a whole lot of this story and do not have the proper kit or it would take a lot of time, energy, and money to be able to make the Wild Core happen. So if and when they do, it will be spectacular. And if they don't, they're still legend. So
we will keep it in mind for following plot things to do, but we still have to resolve the plot that we set up at the beginning of the year, eventually when game comes back on. So we have at least one plot arc before we can even consider going into that direction.
Any other questions anybody has, or anybody want to mention an item that they're carrying and tell the story of it?
Quick discretion.
Valdez used to have her girlfriend's skull or her wife's skull attached to her belt. She only does it now because I don't physically have a skull to put on my belt.
Neat.
That's a pretty hefty item.
It also used to talk. It obviously does not anymore.
Talk to undead.
No, her wife's soul was actually like trapped in it. That's how she kept her around. She got permission and put her in there. Explicit consent was given to trap her in a skull.
Something significant that blew Z's mind. Chrissy, you talking reminded me the fact that Nyx's journal exists in this world blew Z's freaking mind.
Yeah, that's true. I think I need to do stuff with that journal.
It's a good journal.
It is. I need to get the papers up for it so I can put some new entries in it.
Yeah. All the talk of what do you have on you that has a story. This is not game related, but it's LARP related. One of my teeny throwing hammers has some gold sharpied runes on it. If anyone knows the story of that one.
I was at VisionCon.
Yep. Meadowmere had the battle arena, and a couple of us went off to do a panel, and I either forgot that you guys asked me to use the hammer because I forget things, or forgot to be told which things happen. And I started panicking because I couldn't find the hammer, and asked a couple of our people to go look for it. Thought maybe somebody had walked off with it because it was in the barrel with the rest of the weapons that we were just showcasing to people. And security got wind of it. And about 20 minutes later, security guy shows up and says, "Is this the hammer you're missing?" And it was a bunch of the hammers that they were giving out to people, and he'd sharpied gold runes on it and handed it to me. I don't remember if that occurred before or after the hammer was returned to me, but it's still one of the funniest memories that I have recently.
It was after we found the hammer.
Yeah.
Okay. I still don't know, who that was, or, I don't know.
One of the security team that we have. Awesome. Well, do you guys want to keep asking questions? Do you guys want to do something different? I've got another video from Ben if we want to answer some more questions from him.
I think I am going to have to be done now. My head is starting to hurt. So I will see you guys around, particularly Claire, whom I might be selling something for. And I'm up to do text chat, at least, if somebody, particularly Kayla, wants to do more that way. But my head is starting to hurt, and I need to not have sounds in my ears right now.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining.
Bye.
I have a question, just overall for everyone to ask or answer. What was your first impression of Nova, and what is it now?
TBD.
Skepticism. Where are you from? What is your name? Let me get your information. I guess not necessarily a high target of just keeping eye on Nova, just because there's not as many cyborgs that fall through to this plane as other. I mean, there is some tech, but it's not extensive. So, yeah, not necessarily like not friendly, but not no animosity, just mostly curiosity and watching. And I would say that's still the case, just because there are more of you now. So that makes it a little more dangerous and potentially stressful for the, for the house.
Keelan had, like, at first, he did not realize that the tech was you. Like, he's seen people adorned with tech before, but not to the extent. And he quickly understood that that was you, and he, for a little while, was fascinated, but slowly started to understand the human side as well, and so now he kind of sees you as just um, a different color of character. Like, he's seeing how everybody is original and how everybody is different, and understands that we're a hub right now, and he's not really surprised at what walks around the corner next anymore.
Okay. Anyone else? This is like an overall question.
I think for Simon, it was similar to Ariana's answer, initially skepticism, but that's developed more into okay, you're just one of the citizens now. It's Simon's job to protect the citizens, so he just assumes that he's going to protect Nova, just like he protects everyone else. He still finds the way that she uses her technology interesting. The fact that you use a little gun to heal people is a little off-putting, since he's used to either magic or surgery. But outside of that, you've become part of the group that is our town.
It's been a while. Z was probably apprehensive at first, but it quickly turned into absolute fascination. Especially when we were kind of forcefully teleported to a different place, and there was all that modern fixtures and lighting, and I broke my knee that day, though. The fact that Nova knew, oh yes, those are called, like light poles, street lights, these, common things, and he's just like, is this kind of what your world's like? And still upset that you won't let her take apart your gun and try and put it back together to figure out how it works. Never let her, because she won't be able to put it back together. Most likely she will not be able to put it back together. But when Z first saw it, she was like, so you shoot little tiny cannonballs out of this hand cannon. So it's cannon, but mini.
That's the Mastercraft item that Z decides to make.
The predecessor to modern.
But yeah, fascination and some kind of similar stories. So.
Awesome. Claire, how do you feel now hearing the other player's perspective of Nova? What are your thoughts?
I kind of expected some skepticism at first, considering she's very, very different from everyone else. And hearing what they think now, either it's the same or it's kind of different. I like that no one really thinks of her in like a negative situation, considering the whole story arc that just occurred, like just occurred. So
Nice. Anybody else have any other questions? Well, guys, we've been going for about 2.5 hours now, doing some really wonderful dives into different characters. Um, how would you guys feel about us go ahead and calling it now, or do you guys have more questions you want to ask?
I'm good with calling it. I'm hungry.
It's fair.
I would say, let's go ahead and call it. But for those that are watching this, or the rest of you, if you have any other questions that you want to put up, once this video goes up, post them underneath, and so players can answer them, or post them on the citizens page. That way, to that player and that character, so that they can answer them in their own words as well.
Yeah, let's put out a challenge for those that watch this video afterwards. Post at least a question, either to everybody in general or to another character. That way we can keep that interaction going, and we can continue to learn about each other. All right. Well, with that being said, guys, thank you so much for attending and being a part of this social. It's been wonderful learning about everybody's characters, and I hope that we can get to playing and experiencing these characters sooner rather than later. But until then, thank you all, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend.